I wanted to make this brief video just to explain something that a lot of business owners are not clear on. So a lot of them are using NHN for automating things, which is great. And in some cases, that's not enough for them, or that's something that you don't have any visibility on. So in this video, I want to clarify basically and present something on things that you just can miss if you want to apply AI to your business. So this is mainly the idea. We will have two parts in this video. This will be the first one, in which we will cover the main topics like so in this video we will cover the main things that one business owner will need to know or understand in order to make sure that their business strategy when implementing AI is successful and doesn't have any problems with it. So let's get started. To get started, we will start first with the requirements. This is the first stage, which we need to understand basically what we want to achieve, what's the objective of this AI, what we want to basically solve with our business in our business, what problems we want to solve, what are specific elements this problem has that we want to solve. Basically, what's the problem that we want to solve, and what specific characteristics we need to understand in order to make it successful. So we have the constraints. So once we know what our goal is, what business objective we want to basically accomplish, what's the business goal that we want to, what's the metric we have in our business that we want to basically optimize with this AI, it will be cost, it will be efficiency. So we want to basically track specifically and make sure that we're doing the right thing for us to be able to work on. So we know the goal, we know the problem. Now we need to understand the constraints. Basically, what constraints we need to meet in order for this solution to be successful. We have, for example, costs, inference time, development time, and business metrics. Cost, how much it's going to cost to run this model. Inference time, how fast. What deployment time we need. In some cases, I work with clients in the agriculture sector, which they need to have a specific model in the same place. So that's something that's specific to each problem that we need to address. And yeah, the other one is business metrics to make sure that we know basically what thing the business we want to improve on, have a clear understanding on what metrics, if the model is able to improve, this project will be a success. Once you have a good idea of high level understanding of the business, what we want to solve, right now we will plan a high level analysis of the solution that we would implement. Basically, evaluate models available, get the benchmarks to see what metrics make sense. And the main idea of this is basically figure out the right set of data that we will use in the next stage. Basically, it will be text data with format, have a high level understanding of the type of data that we will need. Some of the types of data sets that will be needed, depending on the training, it's, for example, supervised, unsupervised, or reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is not something that is done that much. It's just for specific use cases, but it's something that we could also do depending on what we want to solve. Normally, it's just supervised learning, what appears in most projects. So, yeah. So once we have all of that defined, we know at a high level the type of data that we want to use. We will go to data. How can we get, depending on the type of project, we will need different types of data, reinforcement learning, supervised learning, or unsupervised. Assuming we were working with supervised, we will need basically to understand what data we currently have right now. If we're currently having data available that we can use for training these models or not. So normally, if we're speaking about supervised learning, we will need basically, firstly, we will need unlabeled data. Unlabeled data means basically raw data that we would feed the model to generate the prediction. And some sources of this that we can use is basically users or clients. They can provide us data for us to train our models on. The internet, scraping data. Our internal company, like us, we can generate data internally. And another really cool thing that has been improving really fast and in this latest time is using AI to generate it. Like there are different models for different fields like vision and text, which actually help us to generate synthetic data. It can be used for getting really good results also. So, and then once we have all of that data, we need to figure out what's the output, what's the expected output for the model to provide us. So same thing. Like right now, we can use we can internally label the data. We can have users label our data, and we can also use AI to generate the labels for that. Awesome. So now we have our data. Let's go to models. Now we need to basically figure out what's the best model for our use case, and this comes down to different approaches. Like normally we could do like an incremental approach. Basically, first use a model that can be promptable, then using pre-trained models if just prompting doesn't work. Then we could like retrain our models based on data, and also make modifications of pre-trained models as we want. In some cases, we could have a pre-trained model that works models well, but we will need some changes so we can modify the architecture and use the model to train. Yeah, so we could define it in stages. We could also use these models to generate outputs, then train a custom model for us, because normally the price of using our own models is much lower. So that's something we could also do. Nice. So now you might ask, like, once we have a model and we have our data, how can we make sure that the training work or not? That's when we come down to metrics. What we want to do with metrics is basically figure out how can we map the business metric that we define that we need to optimize at the start of a project, start of the requirements, and see how we actually map that to model metrics. That's basically the main part. If we can breach this gap, basically do a position that's good with the business objectives, we can make sure the model will basically perform well in real scenario. So yeah. What else? Also something that will be good to define, given that we define business metrics and thresholds for that, it will be good to define also thresholds for the model metrics. So we make sure if we reach this threshold on the model metrics, we can get this threshold or this value on the business metrics, which is basically what we want. Like how we can map this solution to something in reality, basically. So once we define the objective, the metrics, and we can basically train the model with different versions. We can try different parameters and see different configurations of data or the IP parameters of the model and see which one provides better results for us. Cover model, and we know that it has good performance, that it is well data set. The last thing to do that is just put it on production, like put it to be able to serve users. Depending on the constraints of the business, we normally have different ways of doing this, but one of them is using the cloud for deployment, using the edge, basically devices that are in this place which this model will be used, or in some cases we could use a combination of cloud and edge, do some heavy computation in the same place, and then move that to the cloud for some lighter processing. That's something we could also do. All right, and then finally, in this first chapter, in this part 1. All right, so in this part 1, the last thing that we have to talk about is basically system metrics. Basically, once we have a metric model in production, we want to make sure that it's performing well over time. So basically, we need to figure out how we can evaluate the outputs of the model in production. Right now, if we can use AI evaluation, we can use user feedback, or we could label an amount of data for us. Like we can get a specific chunk of data in time, label it, and see how the model is performing for that specific chunk of data. It's also important related to this that once we deploy a new version of a new model, to compare it with the previous one to make sure they perform better than the. So this is basically the main strategy that you can do in your business to be able to apply AI in it successfully and be able to reach your business objectives. For the second part, what we will go on is basically improvements and how we can make sure that this gets better over time, how we can make sure that we can decrease the cost, improve the results. So that's what we'll discuss about in the second section, but this will be the first for now. So hope that you like this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers.